Good Thursday morning to you. It's really hard to feel like you're not doing enough, isn't it? I mean, I can't be the only one. In fact, I know I'm not the only one. I've been in conversation with so many parents that are worried that they're not ready for a school year. So many parents that are worried that they're not seeing all of the information, or maybe they're frustrated because there hasn't been a lot of information put out there. I think about those who are running our school and the constant moving target that has been with teacher contracts and school numbers and people seeking more concrete employment. It's just been all around frustrating. I think about it in the world we live right now. Whether your mind is consumed with COVID or with Black lives, doesn't it feel like whatever it is, it's not enough? That's how I've been feeling a lot lately. And so I turn today to 2 Corinthians because there's a passage in there that always gets me when I have that feeling like you are not enough, or you're not doing enough, or you can't be enough. There's a passage that Paul wrestles with as well that makes me think about what this is like in a broader perspective. It comes from 2 Corinthians 12. Paul is talking about his boastfulness, not for himself, but for those who he's heard of were taken up to heaven. There's a couple different occurrences that are following the revelations of the Lord that have been put before him. And then there's this weird verse in verse 6, chapter 12 of 2 Corinthians, verse 6. But if I wish to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will be speaking the truth. But I will refrain for it, so that no one may think better of me than what is seen in me or heard from me. So right away, Paul gets that wonderful humility that we expect in faith. He's talking about all the things he's experienced, not only that have been told to him, but the things he too has experienced. And so in case anyone thinks that he's too special, he diminishes the stories that he's experienced and just focused on God. Now, I started by saying I feel like I'm not enough. And so that may seem like a weird intersection of wanting to boast in what God is doing. Let me say this. Every single day when I wrestle with if I'm doing enough, I also see incredible works of God in our office, at a hospital bed, in a phone conversation, just in community with one another. If we open our eyes, we can see that God is at work. We can see incredible moments that God is producing. But sometimes we only focus on the limitation. And that's what Paul does here. He actually goes on to say in verse 7, even considering the exceptional character of the revelations. Therefore, to keep me from being too elated, a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. This thorn in the flesh that Paul speaks of, we really don't know what it is. We don't know if he actually has a physical ailment or if there's just something that is on his mind or heavy on his heart. I like to joke about the thorn in the flesh. If you remember, or if you do not know, I had hip surgery in January where they literally took out a huge piece of bone that had grown in my flesh. It was literally my thorn in the flesh. But in so many more ways, I get what Paul is saying here. Because every time that I worry I'm not doing enough, every time I feel the heaviness of not being enough, I feel like that is a real and present thorn in the flesh. I feel like those are the moments when I'm being given this to not help me focus on myself, but reorient me to what God is saying. That thorn in the flesh makes me cling to God even more when I might naturally want to take things on for myself. And this is how Paul responds to that. How Paul responds to that annoyance, that nuisance, that thing that he calls Satan as a tormentor and a thorn in the flesh. Paul in verse 8 says this, 3 times I appealed to the Lord about this, that it would leave me. And in verse 9, the response, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. power is made perfect in weakness. Here's the reality. None of us get it right all the time. None of us say enough when we most need to say it. None of us speak truth when we most need to hear it. It's something I wrestle with, and maybe you do too. And that doesn't let us off the hook. That doesn't say, oh, you did a good job, and there's a little pat on the back or a nudge on the head. What it does say is when we have those moments in our weakness, we should evermore cling to the promise and the hope and the fullness of God. In those moments when we aren't enough, that is when we should be evermore aware of our need for God. Let's be honest, we need God all the time. But sometimes it's easy for us to take over and to go onto autopilot. But these are the moments that remind us that even in autopilot, we are desperately clinging to God. So today, if there's something that you're thinking, I can't do this, or I'm not enough for this, or I don't have the energy for this, or whatever that looks like, hear these words. God's grace for you is sufficient today and tomorrow and every day to come. And his power is made perfect in your weakness. I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to hear those words from me too, because I need them. God's grace is sufficient for each of us, and his power is made perfect in our weakness. I hope you have a great Thursday.